Somewhere beneath you, iron wheels are turning. They have been turning for hours now, slow and steady, a deep rhythmic clatter against the rails that you have stopped hearing, the way you stop hearing your own heartbeat. It is simply there. The sound of movement, the sound of distance being consumed. Outside the window, Russia passes. It passes the way Russia always passes, slowly, vastly, without urgency. A birch forest holds the window for 20 minutes and then gives way to a field of white, and the field holds the window for longer still. And somewhere past the field, there is a frozen river and a dark line of trees on the far bank, and then the trees again, and then more white. And the sky above it all, a flat and featureless gray that makes it impossible to tell where the land ends and the clouds begin. You are aboard the Trans-Siberian Railway. The year is 1900. You left Moscow 3 days ago. You have, by the most conservative estimate, 8 more days to go. Tonight, this journey carries you east, through the Ural Mountains that mark the edge of Europe, across the great flat plain of western Siberia, where the horizon sits so far away it seems like a rumor. Along the southern edge of the world's deepest lake, where the water is so clear you can see the bottom at 40 meters, through forests so large they have their own weather. There is nowhere to be, nothing to decide. The train will carry you, whether you are awake or asleep, whether you are watching or not. The wheels will turn, the distance will pass. Close your eyes if you like. The journey will continue without you. Chapter 1. The platform at Yaroslavsky. The journey begins at Yaroslavsky station in Moscow, and the first thing you notice is the smell. Coal smoke, steam, wet wool and cigarette ash, and something underneath all of it, the particular sharp cold of a Russian winter morning, pushing in through the open doors of the station. The platforms are busy at this hour. Porters in dark uniforms move through the crowd, with loaded trolleys, calling out as they go. Families cluster near the train cars, last-minute embraces being exchanged, last-minute words being spoken, the kind of words that get said when people are not sure exactly how long it will be before they see each other again. It is the year 1900. The Trans-Siberian Railway has been under construction for nearly a decade. The western sections are open. The line from Moscow to Irkutsk is largely complete, and the Russian Imperial government, which has been building this railway with the urgency of a country that knows its eastern territories are enormous and its grip on them uncertain, has been advertising the route aggressively. Diplomats travel it. Merchants travel it. Officers being posted to garrisons deep in Siberia travel it. And people like you, people drawn east by curiosity or business, or the particular restlessness that comes from having looked at a map too many times and wondered what is actually out there, travel it. Your car is a first-class sleeping carriage. It is painted blue on the outside, in the manner of the Russian Imperial Railways, and the paint is new enough that it has not yet been fully obscured by soot. Inside, the compartment is small but considered. 2 berths, one above the other, upholstered in green velvet that has seen better years but is still soft to the touch. A small fold-down table beneath the window, polished brass fittings on the luggage racks, a narrow door that can be latched from the inside. You stow your bags in the overhead rack. The porter has already demonstrated, with cheerful efficiency, that everything must be secured before the train moves and settle onto the lower berth. The velvet is slightly damp with the cold, but it will warm quickly. A small oil lamp is fixed to the wall at head height, and it is lit, casting a warm amber glow across the narrow space. Through the window, the platform is still busy. A woman in a heavy fur coat is saying goodbye to someone you cannot see. A soldier stands alone near the next car, smoking, looking at nothing. A small boy is pressing his face against the glass of a window 2 carriages forward, fogging it with his breath. Then the whistle blows, a long single note, very high and very clear above the noise of the station. And then, so slowly you almost do not notice it at first, Yaroslavsky station begins to move backward. It is not moving, of course, you are moving. But for a moment the distinction is unclear, and the feeling is one of enormous and quiet departure, the familiar world sliding gently away behind you while you remain perfectly still. Moscow fades. First the station, then the platforms, then the outer buildings of the city, factories and warehouses, and then smaller houses, and then the city itself releases you, and the train is in the open country, and the birch trees begin. Chapter 2. The first hours. Russia unfolding. The birch trees come first. They come in great white columns, along both sides of the track, their pale trunks close together, their upper branches bare and fine against the gray sky. In summer, this forest is a wall of green. In winter, as it is now, it has a particular kind of transparency. You can see deep into it, between the white trunks, and what you see is more trees, and more trees beyond those, and the forest floor beneath them, covered in a continuous, unbroken sheet of snow. There are no houses here, no roads visible from the train. No sign of human presence except the railway itself, the two dark lines of iron running away behind you into the vanishing point, and ahead of you into the same vanishing point, the track laid across the white land like a sentence waiting to be read. This is the thing that takes some time to understand in these first hours aboard the train. The distances in Russia are not the same as distances anywhere else. You have left one of the great cities of the world, a city of more than 1 million people, of churches and markets and boulevards, and the constant press of human life, and within an hour it is as if none of it existed. The land simply goes on, flat and white and immense. The sky above it the same flat white. The train, a small, dark thing moving through the center of it all. You sit at the window and watch, and the watching requires almost no effort. The forest passes, and then a village appears, a cluster of low wooden houses with smoke rising from their chimneys, the smoke going straight up in the cold, still air. The village is there for a moment, and then it is gone, absorbed back into the white, and the forest returns. The villages you pass in these first hours have a particular character, low and horizontal, built close to the ground, as if in conversation with the cold. The houses made of logs notched at the corners in the traditional Russian manner, the wood silvered by years of weather. Each village has its church, the onion dome rising above the housetops, painted white or blue, or sometimes a deep green that looks almost black against the winter sky. The cross at the top catches the light when the clouds part, then the clouds close again and the village is gone, and the next stretch of birch forest takes its place. You pass through Nizhny Novgorod in the late afternoon, the first major city since Moscow. The train crosses the Oka River on a long iron bridge, and from the window you can see the city arranged on the hillside above the river, the walls of the Kremlin, the churches, the white buildings stepping up toward the horizon. Then the bridge ends and the city falls behind, and the countryside resumes, and it is as if the city were a parenthesis in a very long sentence, and the sentence is continuing. The rhythm of the train becomes the rhythm of the hours. The wheels on the track have a particular sound, not just a clatter, but a syncopation, a double beat with a pause, then the double beat again, arising from the joints between rails where they are bolted end to end. 2 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause, end, 2 beats, 2, pause. It is the heartbeat of the journey, and after a while, it is the heartbeat of everything. You find yourself breathing to it, thinking to it, watching the landscape pass in its tempo. The first meal is served at midday. A steward comes to the compartment and indicates, with a mixture of words and hand gestures and helpful pointing, that the dining car is 2 carriages forward. The dining car is warm and somewhat formal, white tablecloths, heavy silver cutlery, a menu printed in Russian that you navigate by pointing at what the person at the next table appears to be eating. The soup arrives first, dense and hot, and you eat it slowly while the birch forest continues to pass outside the dining car windows, unbroken, as if the trees have been following you since Moscow. and will follow you all the way to the end. Back in the compartment, the afternoon light, what there is of it, in the low gray sky of a Russian winter, begins to fade by 3 o'clock. By 4, it is nearly dark. The lamp on the wall casts its amber circle. The forest outside the window becomes a dark mass, punctuated by the occasional light of a distant farmhouse. You watch these lights appear and disappear with a drowsy attention, each one a whole life, a family gathered around a fire, completely unaware of and indifferent to this blue train passing through the dark on its way to the end of the known world. Chapter 3. The Urals, the edge of Europe. On the second day, the land begins to change. It happens gradually. You would not notice if you were not watching, but the flat white plain that has accompanied you since Moscow begins to undulate slightly. Small hills appear to the east, their shapes soft under their covering of snow, forested to the top. The birch gives way increasingly to darker evergreens, pine and fir, and the sky, which has been a high, flat gray, seems to lower slightly, to press down toward the tree line. These are the Ural Mountains. They do not look like mountains. Not at first, not if you are expecting the jagged peaks and dramatic ridgelines of the Alps or the Himalayas. The Urals are old mountains, ancient beyond easy comprehension, worn down by millions of years of wind and ice to something low and rounded and soft. Their highest point is barely 2,000 meters. They are more like a long, gentle crease in the land than a range in the dramatic sense, a wrinkle in the earth's skin that has, over centuries, been given an enormous significance. Because these are the mountains that divide Europe from Asia. You pass through Perm the evening before the crossing, a city of factories and river traffic, the Kama River wide and dark below the railway bridge, the city lights reflecting in the water in long, broken lines. Perm has the particular atmosphere of a place that has recently grown fast, raw new buildings beside older wooden ones, cranes visible against the sky. The energy of a city that the railway has transformed from a regional center into a junction of the entire country. You eat supper in the dining car as Perm falls behind, and by the time the meal is done, the city is gone and the hills have already begun. The train climbs into them slowly, the engine working harder now, the rhythm of the wheels changing as the grade increases. Outside, the forest thickens. The trees are closer together here, darker, heavier, with snow on their branches. The snow on the ground is deeper, it collects on the windward side of every trunk, building into small white drifts. There is a marker on the eastern side of the pass that you will know when you see it, a simple stone obelisk beside the track, with Europe carved on one face and Asia on the other. The train does not slow for it. The conductor does not announce it. But if you are watching out the right window at the right moment, you will see it go by this plain stone post that marks one of the most significant invisible lines on Earth. You are in Asia now. The feeling is not what you expected. There is no visual change, no sudden difference in the landscape. The forest continues, the snow continues, the wheels continue their syncopated beat on the rails. But something has shifted nonetheless. Some internal compass has registered the crossing, and the distance between yourself and everything familiar has increased in a way that has nothing to do with kilometers. The descent from the Urals is gentler than the ascent. The trees open slightly, and ahead, still far ahead, but visible now in the cleared air of the heights, is the beginning of the western Siberian plain. It extends to the horizon and beyond, flat and vast, white under the winter sky. The train straightens on its tracks and begins to gather speed, and the mountains fall away behind you, and Siberia opens. Chapter 4. Western Siberia, the infinite plain. For 2 days, the horizon does not change. This is not metaphor. The Western Siberian plain is one of the largest flat surfaces on Earth, a lowland basin the size of a continent, drained by rivers so slow they seem to barely move, covered in a mosaic of taiga forest and frozen marsh and grassland that repeats itself so consistently for so many hundreds of kilometers that it becomes something close to hypnotic. You watch it from the window, and the watching becomes a kind of meditation. There is a village, and it is gone. There is a frozen river, its surface gray and smooth, and a single figure crossing it in the distance, small against the white. And then the river is gone, and more trees take its place. There is a line of telephone poles running alongside the track for a while, their wires sagging in gentle curves from one pole to the next, and you count them without meaning to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they veer away from the track and disappear. There is a hawk sitting on a fence post, perfectly still, watching the train pass with an expression of complete indifference, and then the fence post is gone. The world out this window moves at the speed of reading, slow enough to see everything, too fast to hold any of it. The towns that appear along this section of the route are young, many of them settlements that have grown up around the railway itself, their existence entirely dependent on the line that passes through them. Omsk is the largest, a proper city of stone buildings and wide streets, situated at the point where the Irtysh River crosses the railway. The train stops here for an hour. You get off and walk the platform, and the cold is absolute, a dry, deep cold that is nothing like the damp cold of Moscow, that feels not like temperature but like absence, like the air has simply removed itself and left something thinner and purer in its place. The platform at Omsk is busy in its way. Other passengers walk up and down, stretching legs that have been folded into compartment dimensions for days. A woman sells meat pies from a basket, their steam rising in small clouds. Two men are in an animated conversation near the engine, gesturing at the wheels. A dog of indeterminate breed is trotting purposefully toward the front of the train, apparently with somewhere to be. Then the whistle, and the scramble back aboard, and the doors close, and Omsk falls behind, and the plane resumes. Novosibirsk, still new enough in 1900 to be called Novonikolayevsk, is a railroad town that barely existed a decade ago. It sits at the crossing of the great Ob River, and the bridge over the Ob is one of the engineering achievements of the line, a long iron bridge that makes a particular sound as the train crosses it. A deeper resonance that you feel in the floor of the compartment, in the soles of your feet. Below, the river is frozen solid, its surface dusted with snow, its banks white and unmarked. The river crossings are among the few punctuations of the plain that register as genuine events. The Tobol River, the Irtysh, the Ob, each one announces itself with a change in the light before you see the water, a slight widening of the sky as the forest pulls back from the riverbanks. Then the girders of the bridge close around the train, and beneath them the frozen river extends in both directions, white where the snow has settled, gray where the ice is exposed, the surface perfectly flat and enormous. The crossing takes a minute, perhaps two. Then the far bank rises, the forest closes again, and the plain resumes as if nothing had happened. The stations between the major cities are quiet places, a wooden platform, a small building painted yellow or green in the Imperial Railway colors, a station master standing near the track in his uniform coat, watching the train pass with the patient expression of a man who has stood on this platform and watched this train pass many times, and will stand here and watch it many more. Sometimes a small crowd is gathered, people who have come to watch the train not because they are boarding or meeting anyone, but simply because the train is the most dramatic event their day will offer. Children wave. You wave back. After Novonikolayevsk, the plane begins, almost imperceptibly, to rise. The taiga deepens. The trees grow taller. The distance to the horizon contracts slightly as the land rolls into something approaching hills, and you sense, though you cannot yet see, that the geography ahead is going to change. Chapter 5. Life in the Compartment. By the third day, the compartment has become the world. This is the peculiar psychology of a long train journey, the gradual contraction of what feels like reality to the dimensions of this small green velvet room. 12 days on a train is not like 12 days anywhere else. There is no accumulation of places visited, no fatigue of sightseeing, no decision about where to go next. There is only this compartment, and this window, and the land passing outside it, and the slow institution of routines that give shape to days that would otherwise blur into each other. You wake each morning to the sound of the wheels and the faint movements of the train over uneven track. The upper berth, if you have a companion, produces its own small sounds, the shift of a body turning in sleep, the creak of the berth frame. You lie still for a moment in the half-dark, feeling the motion of the train beneath you, and there is something deeply restful in this. The decision about where to go has already been made, and cannot be unmade, and the train is attending to it. Your only task is to be carried. Your compartment companion, if you have one, is likely a stranger who has become, over the course of several days, something more than a stranger, and somewhat less than a friend. One of those intermediate relationships that the compressed sociality of train travel produces, and that dissolve naturally at the journey's end. A merchant from Perm, traveling to sell goods in Irkutsk. A young officer heading to a posting in the east, trying not to look anxious about it. An elderly woman who speaks no language you share, but who communicates with remarkable efficiency through expression and gesture, and the occasional offering of food from a large cloth bag that never seems to empty. The days have a shape. Morning tea comes from the Samovar car, brought by a steward who seems to operate on a schedule legible only to himself, but who never fails to appear at some point before the light fully arrives. The tea is strong and hot and comes in a glass set in a silver holder, the podstakannik, which is the correct and only vessel for tea on a Russian train, and which will become, over the course of this journey, one of the most familiar objects in your world. The middle hours of the day are for reading, or for watching the window, or for conversation with your compartment companion, or for the particular kind of thinking that long train journeys make possible, the kind that is not directed at any problem but simply follows its own thread, unhurried, arriving at conclusions that seem obvious only because you finally had enough time to reach them. There are things you notice after 4 or 5 days that you did not notice in the first 2. The way the light changes hour by hour on a clear day, the low winter sun tracking a shallow arc from southeast to southwest, never rising high, casting long shadows across the snow all day long, so that the landscape always looks like late afternoon, even at noon. The way the train car itself has settled into your body, the slight lean into a curve that you make automatically now, without thinking, the way a sailor compensates for the movement of a ship. The sounds that the car makes when the track is rough versus when it is smooth, the particular smell of the carriage in the morning, coal, smoke, and wool, and the faint sweetness of the lamp oil which you noticed on the first day and have since stopped noticing, and which you will miss irrationally. When you disembark, your compartment companion has begun to feel almost like family in the particular compressed way of train travel. You have shared meals and silences, and the small negotiations of a shared space. You have learned, without being told directly, something of where they are going and why, and they have learned something of you. Not everything, not the parts that require real trust, but enough. Enough to nod at each other in the morning with a warmth that would seem disproportionate if explained to someone who had not made a long journey with a stranger. The afternoon light dims early. After the evening meal in the dining car, the compartment becomes quieter, the corridor outside grows still, the lamp is turned low. The train moves through the dark with its familiar rhythm, and the last thing you are aware of before sleep takes you is the sound of the wheels, the slight swaying of the berth, and, very faintly, the sound of snow, because it is snowing again outside, as it has been for much of this journey, and the particular silence that snow brings to everything. Chapter 6. The Samovar Tea and Time. There is a car near the center of the train where the Samovar lives. It is a large brass vessel, as tall as a child, sitting on a shelf at the end of the carriage, a self-contained heating unit that burns charcoal in a central chimney tube, heating the water in the chamber surrounding it, maintaining it at just below boiling for as long as the charcoal holds. In the mornings and evenings, a small queue forms near it. Passengers arrive with their glass holders, fill them, and carry them back to their compartments carefully, because the glass is genuinely hot and the corridor is not always steady. The ritual of tea on this train is one of the anchor points of the day. It is not the tea itself, exactly, or not only the tea. It is the pause. The act of holding something warm between both hands and sitting with it while the window shows you another version of the same white landscape. The act of not doing anything else for a few minutes. Russia has understood the importance of this ritual for centuries. The samovar is not simply a tea-making device. It is a social institution, an object around which people gather, around which conversations happen or do not happen, around which the comfortable silence of shared warmth is established. In homes across the country, the samovar sits at the center of the table, in the way that a fireplace sits at the center of a room, not just functional, but gravitational, drawing people toward it. Aboard the train, the samovar car serves this function for passengers who might otherwise remain sealed in their individual compartments for the entire journey. The steward who manages the samovar car is a small, precise man who appears to be approximately 50 years old and may be anywhere between 35 and 70. He keeps the car very clean. He refills the samovar on a schedule that he has never explained to anyone, but which results in the water always being hot when passengers arrive. He offers sugar in a small bowl with a spoon that is slightly too large for the bowl, and honey in a jar. And sometimes at stops, where vendors come aboard small dried biscuits that are very hard and very sweet, and that soften perfectly in hot tea. His name, you have determined after several days of careful observation and one exchange involving pointing and repetition, is Fyodor. He has nodded once, in acknowledgement of this. Communication has not significantly advanced since. You find yourself going there not always because you need tea, but because it is where the small social life of the train concentrates. A retired colonel is there most mornings, reading a newspaper that is already 4 days old, carefully working through every article as if the news were still relevant. 2 young students bound for a university in the East play chess on a small magnetic board, the pieces occasionally sliding during a curve in the track. A priest in black robes sits quietly with his tea and appears to be doing nothing at all, simply sitting, perfectly still, in a way that seems practiced. The conversations that happen here are the conversations of people who have nowhere else to be. They have the particular quality of train conversations everywhere, slightly more candid than conversations in fixed places, because the temporary nature of the situation loosens something. A man you have never seen before will tell you things about his life that his closest friends may not know, and then the journey will end, and you will never see him again, and both of you know this, and somehow it makes the telling easier. The tea warms the hands and the chest, and something further down than that. Outside the samovar car's windows, Siberia passes in its vast indifference, but in here, the brass vessel hisses quietly, and the steam rises, and the morning proceeds. Chapter 7. The long stops. The train stops more than you expected. Not the brief station stops of a commuter train a minute or two while passengers board and disembark. These are long stops. Stations where the train sits for 30 minutes or an hour, or occasionally much longer, for reasons that may or may not be communicated to you in a language you understand. Coal and water. Certainly the locomotive requires both in large quantities, and the stops at major stations are timed around this need. Maintenance checks, track clearances. The particular unhurried operational logic of a railway that covers enormous distances across enormous land and has not yet developed the obsessive punctuality of the Western European lines. At first, the long stops feel like interruptions. Then they become the punctuation of the journey, the moments when the continuous forward motion pauses and you can step off the train and stand on a platform and remember what it is like to be in a place rather than between places. The cold hits you immediately when you step down onto the platform. It is a clean, sharp cold, the kind that clears the lungs and makes the eyes water, and after the warmth of the compartment, it is almost a relief, a reminder that the outside world is real and three-dimensional. You walk the length of the platform once, twice, the snow crunching under your boots, the breath coming out in small clouds. The station platforms along this route are worlds of their own. At the larger stops Krasnoyarsk, Omsk, there are proper station buildings with waiting rooms and buffets where you can eat a real meal at a table that does not sway. At smaller stops, the platform may be little more than a wooden walkway beside the track, with a small shelter for the station master and a few wooden benches. But at almost every stop, even the smallest, there are vendors. They appear the moment the train halts, women mostly, bundled against the cold in layers of shawl and coat, carrying baskets and cloth-wrapped packages and small ceramic pots. They walk alongside the train, calling out their goods in voices made sharp by cold and commerce: bread, hard-boiled eggs, still warm from the pot, smoked fish, pickled vegetables in small jars, pies with cabbage, pies with meat, pies that are a mystery until you bite into them, hot soup ladled into whatever vessel you hold out. You buy food at these stops with the mix of pointing and coin offering that works when language does not, and the transactions have a warmth to them that transcends the absence of shared words. The woman who sells you a small pot of pickled mushrooms wraps it in cloth to keep it from the cold, and demonstrates with gestures how you are to eat it slowly, she suggests, with bread, and then the whistle blows, and she steps back from the train with the unhurried confidence of someone who has done this 1,000 times. And you climb back aboard, and the platform slides away behind you, and the train returns to its business. At Krasnoyarsk, the stop is long enough to walk into the town. You go with the officer from your carriage, who has been to Krasnoyarsk before and knows where the good bread is sold. The town is built on the bank of the Yenisei River, one of the great rivers of Siberia, wide and dark and moving fast even in winter, the current too strong for the ice to fully take hold in the main channel. You stand at the bank for a few minutes and watch the river, the dark water moving between its white edges, moving east, the same direction you are going. And there is something companionable in this, the sense of traveling with the river rather than across it. The bread the officer knows about is dark rye, dense and slightly sour, sold by a woman in a small shop 2 streets from the station. You buy a loaf and carry it back to the train. It will last 2 days, sliced thin, eaten with the butter from the dining car. It is, for reasons you cannot fully explain, the best bread you have eaten on this journey. The whistle at Krasnoyarsk comes while you are still 100 meters from the train. You run the first time you have run since Moscow and board at the last moment, and the door closes behind you and the train begins to move. The officer is already in the corridor, laughing. You laugh too. The train gathers speed, and Krasnoyarsk falls behind, and the Taiga opens ahead. These stops leave behind a particular feeling, something like gratitude for the motion that resumes after them, and something like wistfulness for the brief solidity of being still. Chapter 8. The Taiga Trees Without End. East of Krasnoyarsk, the forest deepens. You have been passing through forest, off and on, since Moscow. But the taiga of central Siberia is different in kind from the birch forests of European Russia, different even from the mixed woodland of the western Siberian plain. This is boreal forest, the great circumpolar belt of evergreen trees that stretches across the northern latitudes of the entire planet, from Scandinavia, through Russia and Siberia, and across Alaska and Canada in one continuous band. It is the largest terrestrial biome on Earth. It covers more than 17 million square kilometers. Roughly 1/3 of all the trees on the planet are in this forest. from the window of a first-class carriage on the Trans-Siberian Railway in the winter of 1900. These are not statistics. They are simply the trees. Pine, mostly, and fir and larch, the larch having lost its needles in winter, so that it stands pale and bare among its evergreen neighbors, its bare branches making a particular tracery against the sky. The trees are tall and straight, growing close together, their lower trunks clear of branches for several meters because the deep shade of the upper canopy kills whatever tries to grow below. The snow lies on their branches in discrete flat shelves, accumulating until the weight releases it in small sudden falls that leave the branch springing bare. There is almost no undergrowth visible beneath the trees in winter. The floor of the taiga is covered in snow, the surface of it unbroken and smooth between the trunks. No footprints, no trails. Just the geometry of the trees and the uniform white between them. The train moves through this forest the way a sentence moves through silence, the only structure in an immense emptiness. Watching it from the window, you develop a new relationship with the concept of wilderness. This is not wilderness as dramatic landscape. There are no peaks here, no canyons, no spectacular natural features. This is wilderness as sheer quantity, the simple, overwhelming fact of more trees than you will ever be able to see in one lifetime, extending in every direction to distances that the human mind is not really equipped to process. Hours pass. The forest does not change. The sky above it, glimpsed between the crowns of the trees, is the same flat gray. The rhythm of the wheels is the same, and yet you do not find yourself bored. There is something about the taiga that resists boredom, not because it is interesting in any conventional sense, but because it is so completely and fully itself. It does not ask anything of you. It simply continues. At rare moments, a break in the trees reveals something that makes the scale suddenly legible. A frozen river in the distance, a mountain ridge low on the horizon, a clearing where the stumps of felled trees stand like broken teeth in the snow. And then the forest closes again, and the glimpse is gone, and you are back inside the green darkness and the pale trunks and the snow on the branches. Occasionally the forest produces a sound. You hear it rather than see it. A soft collapse somewhere in the trees, a small avalanche of snow falling from an overloaded branch, followed by silence. Then another, farther away. The forest breathes and settles. Somewhere in its depths, not visible, not audible from the train, are the animals that live here. The Siberian tiger in the southern portions, moving through the deep taiga in patterns no human has mapped. The brown bear, sleeping now in its den beneath an upturned root mass somewhere in this forest. The lynx, the wolverine, the sable, that small dark creature whose fur was once worth more than gold, whose pursuit drove Russian trappers east across Siberia centuries before the railway existed. You are following old paths, in a way. The railway runs where the fur traders walked. In the deepest parts of the taiga, the train passes river valleys where the ice has stacked into great compressed plates, forced upward by the current beneath it, forming ridges and pressure mounds that look, from the height of the train window, like the ruins of something deliberate walls, perhaps, or the foundations of a structure so old its purpose has been lost. The Yenisei and its tributaries are frozen now, but you can feel, looking at the ice, the power of the water underneath it. Come spring, that ice will break suddenly, catastrophically, with a sound described by those who have heard it as somewhere between an explosion and a thunderstorm, and the river will run wide and brown and fast for weeks, carrying the winter away. You find yourself not wanting to look away. Chapter 9. Lake Baikal. Nothing prepares you for Baikal. You have been told about it, perhaps. You have seen it on maps, the long, curved mark of it in the geography of Siberia, shaped like a crescent or a comma, or the mark a thumb might leave if pressed into soft clay. You know the numbers: 636 kilometers long, 80 kilometers wide, at its broadest point. the deepest lake in the world, 1,642 meters at its deepest, a depth that has never been fully mapped. 20% of all the fresh liquid water on the surface of the Earth. The numbers do not help. The train approaches Baikal from the northwest, following the valley of the Angara River, the only river that drains out of the lake, which feeds hundreds of rivers into it and releases water through only this one exit, as if it were keeping everything it receives. The valley narrows as the train descends, the hills rising on either side, and then the hills open, and the lake is simply there. It is the color of pewter in the winter light. Not quite gray, not quite blue, something between them, something that changes as the light changes, passing through silver and slate and a deep cold green at the edges where the ice has formed along the shore. Because Baikal does freeze in winter, the surface of it, at least, and the ice is famous, peculiar. The ice of Baikal is transparent. Not merely clear, but genuinely transparent, like thick glass, so that standing on it, you can look down through it into the dark water below and see fish moving at depths of several meters. And the sensation is one of standing on nothing, of floating, of the solid ground having quietly withdrawn itself. In 1900, the railway does not yet go around the southern end of the lake. That section of the Circum-Baikal line will not open until 1904. To continue east, passengers and their baggage must be transferred to an icebreaker ferry that crosses the lake. This is not a minor inconvenience. It is a journey within the journey, a crossing of 30 to 40 kilometers of ice-covered fresh water on a specially built ship, the Baikal, which is wide and low and moves through the ice with a grinding, shuddering persistence. You stand at the rail of the ferry and watch the western shore recede. The mountains behind it, the Primorsky Range, are reflected in the dark, unfrozen water at the center of the lake, where the ice has not yet closed. The cold is extraordinary, different from any cold you have known on the journey so far, a cold that comes off the water and off the ice together, a cold that has depth and dimension to it, as if the lake were generating its own climate. The crossing of the lake takes between 3 and 5 hours, depending on ice conditions. The icebreaker Baikal works methodically, pressing forward into the ice, backing off, pressing again, a slow, grinding progress across a surface that is not quite navigable and not quite impassable. You stand at the rail for a while, and then the cold drives you inside, into the ship's small passenger saloon, where a stove is burning, and other Trans-Siberian passengers are gathered in various attitudes of patience and discomfort. Someone has brought a pack of cards. A game begins in one corner. At the center of the lake, for a few minutes, you can see the full circle of the horizon. Water in every direction, the ice and the dark open patches, and the mountains behind you on the west shore growing smaller, and the mountains ahead on the east shore, not yet risen above the water line. You are in the exact center of something enormous, and the sky above the lake is a different sky than the sky over the forest higher, somehow wider, the clouds arranged differently, as if the presence of all this water has changed the atmosphere above it. When the eastern shore finally arrives, the mountains rising, the dock at Mysovaya, the waiting train that will carry you onward, there is a feeling of completion that has nothing to do with the miles covered. You have crossed Baikal. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, something you will remember long after the other details of this journey have softened into impressions. When you reach the eastern shore and reboard the train, Baikal is still visible for a long time through the rear window, a gray shine in the mountains, getting smaller, getting further. You watch it until it disappears. You do not feel, afterward, that you have left it behind. You feel that you are carrying it with you. Chapter 10. Night on the Train. The nights on this train are unlike any nights you have known. There is a particular quality to sleep in motion, a depth to it, a surrender to it, that still sleep on still ground does not produce in the same way. The body learns quickly. By the second night, The movement of the train is not a disturbance but a condition of sleep, the slight swaying, the regular percussion of the wheels, the small sounds of the car settling over uneven track. These become the signals that it is time to rest, and the body responds to them. The berth is narrow, and the blankets are heavy wool and slightly rough, and they warm quickly, and by the time you have arranged yourself on the thin mattress and pulled the blanket up, the warmth is already there, and the lamp is turned to its lowest setting, and the darkness outside the window is complete. What you hear, in this darkness, is the train. Not as noise by now, the sound of the train has been absorbed into the background of existence, below the threshold of conscious attention. What you hear is closer to a rhythm. The two beat of the rails, steady and unvarying. The creak of the car body at a curve. The very faint sound of wind against the windows when the train moves through open country and the wind is up. Somewhere down the corridor, a door opening and closing, and under all of it, felt more than heard, the deep vibration of the engine, that continuous low note that passes through the floor and the berth frame and into your bones. The darkness outside the window is broken occasionally by lights. A station passing too fast to read its name, the platform lights blurring into a single horizontal streak of yellow. A farmhouse in a clearing, a single window lit, the light warm and stationary while everything else moves. The moon, when the clouds part coming and going, obscured and revealed, its light falling across the snow and turning it blue-white and clean. You do not always know if you are asleep or not. This is one of the gifts of the night train. The line between waking and sleeping becomes permeable, and you pass back and forth across it without drama. You are watching the dark trees pass. Then, you are not watching anything. Then, you are watching again, and the trees are different trees, and an indeterminate amount of time has passed, and the train is still moving, and everything is fine. There are nights when the moon is up, and the sky is clear, and the snow outside the window has a blue-white luminosity that is almost bright enough to read by. On these nights, the taiga through which you pass has a different character. Then, in the day, the shadows of the trees are very black and very precise, and the snow between them catches the moonlight and holds it, and the whole forest is a study in silver and shadow that goes on and on in every direction as the train moves through it. On other nights, the sky is overcast, and the dark outside the window is total, not the comfortable darkness of a room with the curtains drawn, but a real darkness. The darkness of distance and cold, and the complete absence of human light. In these stretches of the journey, you become aware of how far you are from everything. Irkutsk is still hours away. Moscow is 4,000 kilometers behind you. There is a particular quality to being precisely this far from everywhere, not frightening, exactly, but clarifying. The things that seemed important before you left have a different scale now. The things that seemed complicated have either resolved themselves or revealed themselves as genuinely complicated, and you know the difference now, which you did not entirely know before. The corridor outside the compartment is quiet at night. Occasionally, you hear soft footsteps, another passenger making their way to the Samovar car or back, and the footsteps recede, and silence returns. The lamp burns very low. The berth sways slightly. The wheels maintain their rhythm as they have maintained it for days, as they will maintain it until the journey ends. The great questions of the night: where am I going? Who am I becoming? What does any of it mean? Lose their urgency on a train. The train is going east. You are on the train. Beyond that, nothing needs deciding tonight. Sleep comes the way it comes to children, not as a decision but as an event, arriving when it arrives, received without resistance. Conclusion: the rhythm that remains. The journey from Moscow to Irkutsk, the eastern end of the operational railway in 1900, the edge of what the line has yet reached, takes approximately 12 days in winter conditions. 12 days of birch forests and Ural crossings, and the great flat plain, and the deepening taiga, and the pewter surface of Baikal, and the slow accumulation of distance that no other form of travel quite replicates. People who have taken long train journeys often describe a difficulty in returning to the rhythms of ordinary life. Not sadness, exactly. Something more like adjustment, the way the eyes adjust when you move from dark to light, the way the body adjusts to solid ground after weeks at sea. The rhythm of the train stays in you for a while. After the train is gone, you find yourself on the first night in a stationary bed, slightly missing the motion. You find yourself listening for the beat of rails that is no longer there. There is a woman who boards the train at a small station somewhere in the Siberian Taiga 3 or 4 days east of the Urals. You have lost precise track, and who sits in the compartment across the corridor with a child of perhaps 4 years. A small, serious boy who spends the first hour of the journey standing on the seat and pressing his face to the window with complete concentration, as if he has been assigned to watch the forest and intends to carry out his assignment properly. The woman reads. The boy watches. The train moves. This is the entirety of what is happening in this corner of the carriage, and it is somehow exactly sufficient. On the last evening before Irkutsk, the conductor comes through the carriages and reminds passengers of the arrival time. The announcement, delivered in Russian, which you have by now developed a very basic ability to parse for critical information, produces a small collective stir. People begin, quietly, to reassemble themselves. Bags are brought down from overhead racks. Compartments that have been lived in for 12 days are returned, incompletely, to something resembling their original order. The journey is ending, and the ending is visible now. And there is a distinct feeling in the carriage that is not quite sadness and not quite relief, something in between. The feeling of a thing that was very long and very complete coming to its natural close. What the Trans-Siberian gives you, beyond the distance, beyond the simple fact of having been carried across 9,000 kilometers of one of the largest countries on earth, is time. Unstructured, unhurried, undemanded time. Time in which the land passes, and the tea is drunk, and the conversations happen or don't happen, and the nights come and go, and the wheels keep turning. This is rare in any century, perhaps rarer in this one than in any before it. The gift of having nowhere to be except where you already are. The gift of a destination that is still days away, and the journey itself to inhabit. Outside the window, Russia continues. It will continue for as long as you need it to. The wheels turn, the distance passes. The snow comes down on the taiga, on the frozen rivers, on the long straight track running east through the dark. You are still moving. You are exactly where you need to be. Rest now.